When you stop talking to a man, something very interesting happens. And a lot of women don't understand this part. They think silence is weakness. They think if they don't call, don't text, don't explain, they're losing power. But let me tell you something, silence don't make a man forget you. Silence makes a man think, and thinking is dangerous for a man who already caught feelings. When you stop talking to a man, the very first thing that happens is not anger, not relief, and not even confidence. It's curiosity. And curiosity is powerful because it wakes up a man's ego. See, men are wired to notice patterns. When something becomes consistent, they stop questioning it. Your voice, your messages, your presence became part of his normal. He didn't have to think about it anymore because it was always there. And the moment that pattern breaks, his mind starts asking questions he wasn't prepared to answer. At first, he tells himself it's nothing. He says you're just busy, or you'll reach out later. His ego convinces him he still has control. But hours pass, then a day, maybe two, and that silence starts feeling different. Because now he realizes you didn't announce your exit. You didn't explain. You didn't beg. You just stopped. And when a woman goes quiet without drama, a man feels that shift deep in his chest, even if he won't admit it out loud. That silence creates a gap, and men hate gaps they can't fill. His ego starts working overtime trying to protect him. He wonders, why isn't she calling? Why isn't she asking where I am? Why isn't she reacting? Because reactions are how he measures his importance. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding his sense of control, and now curiosity turns into concern. He starts checking his phone more than he wants to admit, not because he expects a message, but because part of him hopes he's wrong. He reads old conversations. He remembers how available you were, how present you were, how much energy you gave. And suddenly, he notices how quiet things are without you. That's when his ego gets uncomfortable. Because ego likes attention, even when it pretends not to care. What really shakes him is realizing that your silence isn't empty. It feels intentional. And intentional silence tells a man, I chose myself. That's not something he can brush off easily. Because if you chose yourself, that means he wasn't enough to keep you talking. And no man likes feeling replaceable, especially by peace. Curiosity grows because he doesn't know what you're doing. Are you happy? Are you calm? Are you talking to someone else? Silence gives him no answers, and no answers force him to imagine. And imagination is dangerous because now he's picturing you smiling without him, moving forward without him, living without waiting on him. That image does more damage than any argument ever could. This is when his ego flips from confidence to insecurity. He starts wondering if he misjudged you, if he underestimated how strong you were, if he assumed you'd always be there. Because a woman who stops talking without warning shows emotional maturity, and that scares a man who was taking her presence for granted. And here's the truth most people don't say out loud. Silence doesn't chase a man away, it pulls him toward reflection. Talking gives comfort. Silence demands awareness. And once his ego realizes it can't control your attention anymore, it hands the situation over to his feelings. That's when curiosity becomes obsession, not because you disappeared, but because you left with dignity. When you stop talking to a man, the distance doesn't just create space between you and him, it creates an emotional vacuum. And that vacuum forces him to feel something he's been avoiding. See, while you were there, while you were talking, listening, encouraging and checking in, you were quietly filling emotional gaps in his life. You became the place where his stress went, where his doubts softened, where his ego felt safe. He may not have labeled it that way, but he felt it. And when you step back, that comfort disappears all at once. At first, he doesn't connect the feeling to you. He just feels off. His day feels heavier. Conversations feel shorter. Things that used to relax him don't hit the same anymore, and he can't figure out why. That's because emotional support isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up in presence. So when that presence is gone, the absence feels bigger than he expected. That's when he starts noticing how often he used to reach for you without thinking. Not always to talk about something serious, sometimes just to share a thought, a joke, a moment. Now there's no one to send that to. And men aren't great at sitting with unprocessed emotions. When that outlet disappears, everything he pushed aside starts bubbling up. Distance forces him to sit with his own feelings. The stress he used to vent. The frustrations he used to laugh off with you. The loneliness he never admitted because you made it feel manageable. Now he has to face it alone, and that's uncomfortable. Because being alone with your emotions exposes what you've been avoiding. He begins to realize that you weren't just talking to pass time. You were providing emotional stability. You were making his life easier without asking for credit. And when something makes your life easier, you don't notice it until it's gone. That's when regret creeps in. Not loud regret, but quiet reflection. The kind that shows up late at night when distractions fade. He starts replaying moments where you showed up for him and he didn't show up the same way. He remembers times you listened and he brushed things off. Times you gave patience and he gave excuses. And the distance magnifies those memories because now there's no new interaction to distract him from the past. What really gets him is realizing the gap you left can't be filled easily. Friends don't replace emotional intimacy. Distractions don't replace understanding, and pride won't replace connection. So he feels the weight of that loss in small, everyday moments. A song reminds him of you. A quiet moment makes him think of your voice. A problem makes him wish he could talk to you. Distance doesn't make him forget. It makes him aware. Aware of how much emotional labor you carried. Aware of how much energy you poured in. Aware that you added value to his life in ways he didn't fully appreciate at the time. And awareness is painful when it comes too late. That emotional gap keeps growing the longer the silence lasts. And the more he feels it, the more he understands that what he lost wasn't just conversation. It was connection. It was comfort. It was someone who made him feel seen. And that realization changes the way he looks at you, even if he never says it out loud. When you stop talking to a man, his mind doesn't go quiet the way yours might. Instead, it starts running backward. He begins replaying moments he once brushed past, conversations he half listened to, and efforts you made that he assumed would always be there. At the time, those moments felt ordinary to him because consistency can disguise value. When something shows up every day, people stop recognizing it as special. They start expecting it. And expectation is where appreciation often disappears. Now that the silence is there, the memories come back with weight. He remembers how you checked in when no one else did, how you noticed small changes in his mood, how you stayed patient when he was distant. Those things didn't register as significant when they were happening. They felt automatic, like background noise. But when the noise stops, the quiet becomes impossible to ignore. He starts asking himself questions he never bothered to ask before. Was she always this understanding? Did I really listen when she talked? Did I assume she'd stay, no matter how little I gave back? These questions don't come from guilt at first, they come from confusion. Because in his mind, things weren't bad, and men often mistake the absence of conflict for the presence of happiness. The more he replays the past, the more he notices imbalance. He sees how often you adjusted, how often you waited, how often you gave without demanding much in return. And that realization is uncomfortable because it challenges the version of himself he prefers to believe in. Nobody likes realizing they benefited from someone else's effort without matching it. He also remembers the warnings he didn't take seriously, the moments you pulled back slightly, the times your tone changed, the silence that came before the final silence. At the time, he assumed you'd bounce back like you always did. But now he understands those were signs, not moods. And recognizing that too late creates a specific kind of regret, the kind that sits quietly and doesn't ask for forgiveness, because it doesn't know if it deserves it. As he keeps replaying the past, he starts rewriting the narrative in his head. He remembers you as stronger than he gave you credit for, more independent, more valuable. Not because you told him, but because you walked away without trying to convince him. That shift changes how he sees you. Silence reframes the story. It turns you from someone who was always available into someone who chose herself. What really stays with him is the realization that he took your presence for granted. Not intentionally, but comfortably. And comfort can be dangerous when it leads to complacency. He thought time was on his side. He thought there would always be another conversation, another chance, another day. And silence takes away the illusion of endless time. Now, every memory feels sharper. Every laugh feels more meaningful. Every moment feels like something he should have protected instead of assumed. And even if he never reaches out, even if pride keeps him quiet, those memories don't disappear. They settle in his mind, reshaping how he understands what happened. Because when you stop talking, you don't erase yourself from his life. You become a reference point, a reminder of what it felt like to be supported, understood, and accepted. And once a man recognizes that he had something real and let it slip through his hands, that awareness stays with him far longer than any argument ever could. When you stop talking to a man, the next thing that shows up is a quiet battle inside him, a battle between his pride and his feelings. On the outside, he may look calm, unbothered, even confident, but internally something shifts. Pride tells him to stay silent, to wait, to prove he's not affected. Feelings, on the other hand, keep reminding him of you. And that tension creates restlessness, because holding back what you feel takes more energy than expressing it. At first, his pride is loud. It convinces him that reaching out would make him look weak. That silence is a power move. That if you wanted to talk, you would. He tells himself stories to protect his ego. But feelings don't disappear just because pride tells them to. They show up in unexpected moments, when he's alone, when distractions fade, when there's no one to perform strength for. He starts catching himself thinking about you at random times. Not just missing you, but wondering if you miss him. And that's where pride begins to crack, because pride wants control, and wondering gives control away. The moment he starts questioning your absence, he's already losing the internal fight. He replays conversations in his head, trying to figure out if he said something wrong, if he ignored something important, if he assumed too much. Pride hates self-examination, but silence forces it. With no new interactions to focus on, his mind turns inward. And that's uncomfortable for a man who prefers action over reflection. What makes it harder is the realization that you didn't fight for attention. You didn't chase clarity. You didn't demand explanations. You simply stepped back. And that kind of restraint is powerful because it removes his ability to frame the situation in his favor. He can't say you were dramatic or needy. All he has is the truth and the space to think about it. As days pass, feelings gain ground. He starts missing not just you, but how you made him feel about himself, accepted, valued, understood. Pride can't replace that. No amount of pretending can fill that gap, and slowly the desire to reach out grows stronger than the fear of looking vulnerable. But before he reaches that point, there's resistance. He waits, hoping you'll break first, hoping your silence is temporary, hoping he won't have to make the first move. That waiting is where anxiety lies, because every day you don't reach out confirms that your silence is a choice, not an accident. Eventually, pride gets tired. It always does. Feelings are persistent. They don't shout, but they don't leave either. And when feelings win, his perspective changes. He stops asking who has the upper hand and starts asking whether he lost something meaningful. This internal struggle reshapes how he sees you. You're no longer someone who is always there. You become someone who knows her worth, someone who doesn't beg for attention, someone whose absence speaks louder than her presence ever did. And once a man reaches that realization, it doesn't matter if he acts on it or not. The balance has already shifted inside him. When you stop talking to a man, one of the first things he does is test the silence, not immediately and not always directly, but in small, careful ways. He wants to know if he still matters to you. Because attention is how many men measure their importance, and your silence removes that measurement. It leaves him unsure, and uncertainty is uncomfortable. At first, the test is subtle. He might, like an old photo, watch your story the moment you post it, or find a reason to ask something unnecessary. These aren't accidents, they're feelers. He's checking to see if the door is still open, if you'll respond the way you used to,